G'day guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we are here to preview round one. Finally it is here. Forget about opening round and that absolute disaster. We get to see every single team in action for the first time this year in the real stuff. So today we'll be previewing a couple of the big games coming up. So let's get into our first big game of the weekend. It is Hawthorn up against Essendon on Friday night. Essendon, of course, missing last week with their postponed game, and Hawthorn running out winners against Sydney. It sets up for an interesting contest. Essendon had a couple of very exciting pre-season games. Kako and Caddy seem to be the new forward duo for Essendon, which is really exciting. Hawthorn, what a performance by Will Day. He's the best player on the ground, I thought. I picked him for the 3 votes in the Boundary Riders medal, of course, if you watch the review. And this one sets up for an interesting contest. So a couple of questions on either team that I'll be going through today. On Hawthorn's side, can they back up that great performance they had against Sydney last week? It was a very tough game, very warm conditions in Sydney. Can Hawthorn back that up with a game in round one? And on Essendon's point of view, can they find a way to score? It seems at the moment they're already heavily relying on Kako, yet to play a game, and Caddy played under 15 games of footy. They're relying heavily on them two to kick their goals going into this season. Can they find a way to kick a winning score? So, in the end, I have tipped Hawthorn for this game. I think their defence was absolutely insane against Sydney last week. Intercepted most of Sydney's pushes forward, which is going to be a lot easier, I believe, against Essendon with a lesser forward line. Hawthorn's midfield was brilliant. I mean, even when James Worpel went down at half-time, Will Day was, like I said, was the best player on the ground. Such great talking points about him going into the rest of the season. Now, James Sicily as well, moving from back to forward. Being so flexible, Hawthorn now with their positional changes. And the thing is that a lot of people are talking about how Ginnivan and Watson played very poorly. I think that's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, if they can just find their form coming into the season now, the fact that they dominated against the grand finalists last year, and they didn't even have some of their better players perform well, if they can perform well in the coming weeks, I mean, how scary is Hawthorn going to look? So I'm picking Hawthorn to win this one. After that, we get to a Saturday afternoon, Geelong versus Fremantle I want to talk about. This is a very interesting game. It is down in Geelong, so I think that does give the Cats a little bit of an advantage. However, Fremantle don't actually really have the worst record down there. They won there last year, and of course everyone remembers the first final that Geelong had down there in as many years. They lost to Fremantle, and Freo went on to go and make the grand final that year. That was obviously a long time ago, but more recent history, Fremantle won there last time. Now, I think the question marks on this game, the new recruits on either side. You've got Bailey Smith from Geelong, Shea Bolton for the Dockers are the headline acts. Can they both live up to the hype? Bailey Smith is coming off a long-term injury, so it'll be very interesting to see how he performs on the weekend. And Shea Bolton was a massive player for Richmond. I think he's going to be predominantly forward this year for the Dockers, occasionally pinch hit in the midfield, which I think is a good sign. Can they live up to the hype? That's the question I've got for this game. On Fremantle, they do have a decent record down there. Can they continue that going into round one? If they can win their first game of the season and send Geelong with a 0-1 start, I think that'd be a great start for the Dockers season. But the problem with Fremantle is the fact that they've got quite a few players out. You're headlined by Young and Darcy. Still some question marks on a few others, mainly Alex Pearce. If he is out, I can't see a world where Fremantle win this game. But if he is in, I give them a chance. However, no matter what, I am going to be tipping Geelong. I think down in the Cattery to start the season, I think the fact they didn't have to go to Brisbane last week just gives them another extra week of prep time. I'm picking the Cats to win this one by a couple of goals. I think it's going to be one of the games of the round though, so keep your eye out on Geelong and Fremantle. After that, we get to the grand final rematch. The Swans up against Brisbane. And what an interesting contest this sets up to be. The Swans 0-1. A lot of people are talking about the fact they could be 0-3 before their bye. So Sydney have got a couple of question marks. They had a good performance against Hawthorn without being great. There's still a couple of question marks on that forward line in my opinion. And the one thing that Sydney have to do is they have to lock away Brisbane's chance of uncontested marks. That grand final was gone by half time because Sydney just let them kick mark around the ground. I think they had 80 uncontested marks or something by half time, and that's usually what teams have at the end of a game. That's a pretty good performance. So to leave that to half-time, no defensive pressure, wasn't good enough. And there was some things that I saw in the Swans game against Hawthorn on the weekend that I wasn't really a fan of. The fact that Sydney let Hawthorn intercept mark in that first half way too easily was not a good sign. The big reason why they moved Tom McCartan up there is because he's a competitor, and him and Joel Amati let the ball be marked by those key defenders way too easily. So Sydney have to find a way to bring the ball to ground to get players like Hapley involved, Hayward involved, and even Tom Hanley, who came on as the sub. He shows some good signs, but he can't do much if the ball's being marked by a key defender. If they're going to persist with McCartan up forward, They have to bring the ball to ground and compete. And on Brisbane, I don't think there's a lot of question marks, except for the fact that a lot of off-field distractions this week for Brisbane. It's going to be hard to get them back in line. I mean, we saw players like Lachie Neale in an interview last week talk about the fact that he was not even going to play if the game was relocated throughout the week, which I mean is more than fair. I mean, he's got to think about his family. You know, it's only going to be a week later, not even that. People are still, you know, having to deal with the aftermath of Cyclone Alfred. So can they put that aside, get back to the game at hand, and can they perform well? I think they can. I think Brisbane will win this one. Down at the SCG, again, they have a good record against the Swans. I think they've won their last 3. Hasn't had too many issues at the SCG either. And I think that having that week off is not going to be too bad for them. And I think the Swans had a tough game against Hawthorn in their first battle. Can they back that up next week? I'm not too sure. So that's hence why I'm going with the Brisbane Lion.
But before we go any further, a message from me. If you guys enjoy the content and you want to see more, then make sure to become a member on the channel today. For just $4 a month, you can get early access to video essays, access to live recordings of the Boundary Riders podcast, along with exclusive stream perks and much more. And something that I'm super excited to introduce to channel membership this year is the members vote. Every week with the review, you can cast your vote to have your say on the Boundary Riders medal. So for all that and more, click the link down below, and for the added bonus of getting an extra inch onto your member, then do it now. But anyway, let's get back into the content.
And then finally, Collingwood v Port Adelaide. Can Collingwood respond after a very disappointing performance against the Giants on the weekend? And can Collingwood keep their solid record intact against Port Adelaide? They have a very good record against them. And looking at the power, can they run the Pies off their feet? We saw how well the Giants did it on the weekend, especially in the second half. If Port Adelaide can get this game out in the open, I think the Port Adelaide can win this game pretty easily in the end. We saw how Collingwood struggled when GWS got it out of circle of a stoppage or just got it into open space. They really struggle. If Port Adelaide can get this ball on the outside, I give them every chance of winning this game. Now, there is a bit of an injury concern to Connor Rozee. If he's out, right off, Port Adelaide have any chance of winning this game. But on Collingwood's point of view, the fact that they had players cramping that early in the game, like midway through the third quarter, like, look, I'm not one to talk about fitness, but I'm not an AFL player. The fact that they had players going down midway through the third quarter with cramp, and then multiple players were out of the game through cramp, like later in the game, shows that they weren't really prepared for that first game. Port Adelaide do come with a bit of fire in their belly. I do give Port Adelaide a chance. However, I'm going to go with Collingwood. I think they've received a lot of scrutiny this week. I think they're a team that will respond, and I think that was one of the more poor performances we've seen from Collingwood in the last 18 months. So I can't see them doing that 2 weeks in a row. That's why I'm going with Collingwood. And also, I still think with a little bit of doubt on Connor Rozee, I think that Port Adelaide are going to struggle a bit in this game. But like I said, if they can get this ball on the outside, get the ball in motion a lot more, Port, then I give them actually a chance of winning this game, sending Collingwood to 0-2. So with that being said, let's get to our full tips for the weekend. So my tips for round 1 are Carlton, Hawthorn, Geelong, Brisbane, Western Bulldogs, Collingwood, Adelaide, GWS and West Coast. And my brother's tips for round 1, Carlton, Hawthorn, Geelong, Brisbane, Western Bulldogs, Collingwood, Adelaide, GWS and the Gold Coast. So me and my brother have only got one tip different this week. He has tipped the Gold Coast Suns. I have tipped West Coast in the final game. Of course, we have the certainty pick. Now, if you missed it last week, every single week of the season, me and my brother are going to be picking a tip for the round that is our certainty pick. We think that this can't be defeated. This is not good. There's no way in hell we can see an upset coming here. Now, the way the certainty pick will work is for the first couple of rounds of the season, the certainty pick team that we pick from had to have finished lower than their opponent on the ladder in 2024. For the rest of the season, the team that we pick for a certainty pick had to have lost the previous week. So it's kind of hard to do that in the first couple of rounds. That's why we've done that for the first few rounds, picking from ladder positions from 2024. But in future rounds, it will be our certainty pick team has to have lost the previous week to make it a little bit harder for everyone. At the end of the season, the punishment for the amount of wrong certainty tips me and my brother get will be the amount of chilies that we have to eat in the BR Awards live stream at the end of the season. So the BR Awards, you guys know what it is. Well, in case you don't, we will be giving away the Boundary Riders medal at the end of the year, the player who gets the most amount of votes from the review, and we do a bunch of other awards as well. We've got the Goal of the Year from the channel, the Mark of the Year, we announced the Tipping Comp winner, the Fantasy Comp winner, we may have a couple of other awards as well, hint hint, who knows, but that's basically how we're going to do it. And last week, me and my brother picked the certainty pick of Collingwood beating the Giants, so we've already got one chili on the board for both of us, so that's not very good at all. Now, in future rounds as well, me and my brother can't pick the same team for the certainty tip either. So he will have to pick someone different this week. So my certainty pick for round one is the Adelaide Crows to beat the Saints. And my brother's certainty tip for round one is Collingwood to beat Port Adelaide. And finally, guys, the stream for this weekend, of course, Thursday night, Richmond v Carlton. So every single week this season, we're going to be doing a live stream for the Thursday night contest. Of course, the opening round, we had the game postponed, so we did the Friday night game against Sydney and Hawthorn. But as long as you don't see any other Cyclones, we should be doing Thursday night from now on. So of course, round one stream is Richmond v Carlton. But guys, just quickly, we did leave the tipping comp open for an extra week, just so we could have other people join, because it was only 2 tips. But the tipping comp will be closed on Thursday night, and the AFL Fantasy Comp will be shut on Thursday night as well. So you've only got one more chance to join. Codes are in the bottom corner right now. Just go click the link down below to go join the tipping comp in the AFL Fantasy Comp. We've seen a lot of people show some great support over there, so make sure to join in on some fun, because the winners of both of those competitions will get a $100 gift voucher to the AFL store. But that is all from me from the preview for round one, guys. Get excited. Every single team is back. Opening round, what a joke. Who gives a crap about that anymore? But guys, if you did enjoy this one, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. That's all from me, so we'll catch you all in the next one.